Close your eyes for just a moment, if you'd like, or let them rest softly on these words. Either way is perfectly fine. Tonight is a night for gentleness, a night for allowing yourself to simply be, without effort, without struggle, without the need to solve anything at all. The day has been long, hasn't it? Your mind has been working so hard, thinking and planning and wondering. But now, right now, in this quiet moment, you can let all of that begin to settle. Like snow falling softly onto still water, each thought can drift down and dissolve, becoming part of something peaceful and whole. Tonight, I want to tell you a story. It's a story about someone very much like you. Someone who carried the weight of 1,000 thoughts. Who lay awake at night turning over worries, like smooth stones in their hands, examining each one from every angle, searching for answers in the darkness. But this is also a story about discovering something beautiful. About learning that peace doesn't come from solving every problem or understanding every mystery. Peace comes from something much simpler, much softer than that. So settle yourself now, wherever you are. Let your shoulders drop just a little. Let your jaw unclench. Feel the surface beneath you holding you completely, so you don't have to hold yourself anymore. And breathe, just once slowly, in through your nose, filling your lungs with this quiet moment, and out through your mouth, releasing the day that has passed. Good. Now, let me tell you about Maya. Maya lived in a small village nestled between two gentle mountains. The village was so small, it didn't even have a name that anyone could agree upon. Some called it Riverside, for the silver stream that wound through its heart. Others called it Cloudrest, because the morning mist would settle there so peacefully. And still others simply called it home. The village was a place of soft lights and softer sounds. At night, lanterns would glow in windows like captured fireflies, and the smell of wood smoke and baking bread would drift through the narrow streets. It was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone, where time moved slowly, like honey dripping from a spoon on a warm afternoon. But Maya, despite living in this peaceful place, could never seem to find peace herself. She worked in the village library, a beautiful old stone building covered in climbing roses that bloomed in every shade of pink and white. Inside, the library was a maze of wooden shelves that reached toward vaulted ceilings, filled with books that smelled of vanilla and thyme. Dust motes danced in the streams of sunlight that poured through tall windows, and everything was hushed and holy in the way that places of quiet knowledge often are. Maya loved the library. She loved the whisper of turning pages, the soft shuffle of footsteps on the worn stone floors, the way people's faces would soften when they found exactly the book they'd been seeking. She loved organizing the shelves, running her fingers along the spines of the books, each one a small door to another world. But even surrounded by stories and beauty, Maya's mind would not be still. As she shelved books, her thoughts would spiral. Had she offended Mrs. Chen when she couldn't find the gardening book she requested? Would the library board approve her request for new chairs? Or did they think she was asking for too much? What if the plumbing problem in the East Wing was worse than it seemed? What if she had forgotten to lock the side door last Tuesday? What if? The thoughts would tumble over each other like a stream rushing over rocks, each one catching on the next, pulling her attention this way and that until she felt dizzy with the motion of her own mind. At night, it was worse. Maya would lie in her small bedroom on the second floor of the cottage she shared with her elderly cat, Luna. The room was cozy, with sloped ceilings and a window that looked out over the village square. She had made it beautiful in the way that gentle souls do, with dried lavender hanging in bunches, with a quilt her grandmother had sewn. with watercolor paintings of the mountains on the walls, painted in soft grays and purples and blues. But beauty could not quiet her mind. She would lie there, Luna purring softly at her feet, and her thoughts would begin their nightly journey. They would review the day, examining every conversation, every interaction, looking for mistakes, for misunderstandings, for problems that might be lurking just beneath the surface of things. Did Tomas seem upset when she reminded him about his overdue books? Perhaps she had been too stern, or not stern enough. What if he thought she was judging him? What if the whole village thought she took her job too seriously, and then her thoughts would leap forward, into the future, into 1,000 possible futures, each one branching off into more possibilities, more worries, more scenarios to consider. What if the library lost its funding? What if she had to find a new job? Where would she go? What would she do? And her cat was getting older. What if something happened to Luna? She couldn't bear the thought, and yet the thought came anyway, unbidden, unwelcome, settling heavy on her chest. Some nights, Maya would count her breaths, trying to calm herself. In for 4 counts, out for 4 counts. But even as she counted, her mind would slip away, attaching thoughts to the numbers. 4. There were 4 people at the library board meeting. 8. She had worked there for 8 years. 12. And she would lose track, and have to start again, frustrated with herself for not being able to do this one simple thing. This one thing that was supposed to bring peace. On particularly difficult nights, Maya would get up and go to her window. She would lean on the sill, feeling the cool night air on her face, and look out at the village sleeping beneath the stars. The stars. Oh, how she envied the stars. They seemed so certain, so fixed in their places, following their ancient paths across the sky without worry, without doubt. They didn't lie awake wondering if they were shining brightly enough, or if they were in the right position, or what the other stars thought of them. They simply shone. And the moon, hanging full and luminous above the mountains, pouring its silver light over everything. The moon didn't seem to struggle. It waxed and waned in its own time, following a rhythm deeper than thought, older than worry. "How do you do it?" Maya would whisper to the moon. "How are you so calm?" But the moon never answered. It only shone, patient and eternal, as it had for countless souls before her who had asked the very same question. Hashtag part 2. The invitation. One particularly sleepless night, when the moon was full and the stars were bright, Maya finally gave up trying to rest. It was late or early, depending on how you looked at it. That quiet hour when even the village's night owls had gone to bed. When the world felt suspended between yesterday and tomorrow. She wrapped herself in her grandmother's quilt, soft and worn with love, and made her way downstairs. Luna, sensing her human's distress, followed with a concerned meow. "I know, old friend," Maya said softly, scooping the cat into her arms. "I know. I just can't seem to turn my mind off tonight." She settled into the chair by the cold fireplace, Luna purring in her lap. The cottage was full of shadows and silver moonlight. Through the window, she could see the village square, empty and peaceful, and beyond it, the dark shapes of the mountains against the star-filled sky. And that's when she saw it, a light. Not in the village, but beyond it. High up on the northern mountain, where no one lived, where there were only pine forests and rocky paths, and the occasional shepherd's hut. A small, warm light, like a candle burning in a window. Maya sat up straighter, disturbing Luna, who grumbled in protest. "Do you see that?" she whispered. The light flickered, steady and inviting. As Maya watched, she felt something stir in her chest. Curiosity, perhaps, or maybe something deeper, a pull, a sense that this light was somehow meant for her to see. She watched it for a long time, Luna warm and heavy in her lap, until the sky began to pale in the east, and the stars started to fade. The light remained, a small beacon in the darkness, and even as dawn came, Maya could still see it, a pinprick of warmth against the shadowed mountain. All through the next day, as she worked in the library, Maya thought about the light. For once, her overthinking mind had something specific to focus on, something outside of herself. What was it? Who had lit it? Why there, in such a remote place? Mrs. Chen came in for her gardening books, and Maya asked her, "Do you know of anyone living up on the North Mountain? Near the pine grove?" Mrs. Chen, a tiny woman with silver hair and sharp, kind eyes, considered this. "Near the pine grove? No, dear. No one lives up there. Too remote. Too cold in the winter." "Why do you ask? I saw a light there. Last night, or early this morning. A candle or lantern, perhaps. How curious," Mrs. Chen said thoughtfully. "Perhaps a traveler? Or one of the shepherds?" But Maya didn't think it was a traveler. Travelers didn't stay in one place, and this light had stayed steady for hours. And shepherds didn't go to the high places in autumn. They brought their flocks down to the valleys where the grazing was easier. That night, Maya stood at her window again, and sure enough, as soon as true darkness fell, the light appeared. Steady, warm, waiting. "It's like it wants me to see it," she murmured to Luna. The cat, wise in the way that old cats are, simply blinked her golden eyes slowly. For 3 nights, Maya watched the light. For 3 nights, she barely slept, her mind turning over the mystery, imagining a dozen different explanations. And on the 4th morning, she made a decision. She would go to the mountain and find the source of the light. Maya waited until her day off. The library was closed on Sundays. She packed a small bag with some bread and cheese, a flask of tea, and a warm shawl. She wore her sturdy boots and her most comfortable dress, the blue one that reminded her of the sky. Luna watched her preparations with the air of a creature who had seen many strange human behaviors and had learned not to question them too much. "I'll be back before dark," Maya promised, scratching behind the cat's ears. "I just need to know what's up there. Maybe then I can stop thinking about it." It was a beautiful autumn morning. The air was crisp and smelled of wood smoke and fallen leaves. The mountains stood sharp against the pale blue sky, their peaks touched with the first dustings of snow. As Maya walked through the village square, a few early risers greeted her, and she waved back, feeling almost cheerful. She had a purpose today, a clear goal. It felt good to be doing something rather than lying awake thinking about everything. The path to the North Mountain started at the edge of the village, winding past the last few cottages and into the forest. The trees here were ancient, tall pines and firs that stood like pillars in a vast, green cathedral. Their branches filtered the sunlight into soft, dancing patterns on the forest floor, and the air smelled of resin and earth. As Maya walked, her mind began to wander. As it always did. She thought about the library, about the books waiting to be shelved, about whether she should rearrange the children's section. She thought about whether she should plant bulbs in her garden this year, and if so, what kind? Tulips? Daffodils? Or perhaps crocuses, which would bloom earlier and bring color to the last gray days of winter. But then she noticed something. The forest was so quiet, not silent. She could hear birds calling softly to each other, and the whisper of wind through the pine needles. and the occasional rustle of a small creature in the underbrush. But there was a quality to the quiet that was different from the silence of her sleepless nights. This quiet was full, rich, complete. The forest wasn't lying awake worrying about anything. It wasn't reviewing past mistakes or anxiously planning for the future. It simply was, moment by moment, completely present in its own existence. Maya paused on the path, one hand on the rough bark of a pine tree. She took a breath, feeling the cool air fill her lungs, and let it out slowly. The tree beneath her hand was solid, real. It had been here long before she was born, and it would be here long after. It had weathered storms and droughts, harsh winters and blazing summers, and yet it didn't worry. It simply grew, slowly, steadily, reaching toward the light. "How?" Maya whispered. "How do you just be?" The tree, of course, didn't answer. But somehow, standing there with her hand on its bark, Maya felt steadier, less scattered, as if some of the tree's rootedness had transferred to her, even just for a moment. She walked on, and the path grew steeper. Her legs began to ache pleasantly with the effort, and she had to focus on where she placed her feet on the rocky trail. And focusing on her feet meant she couldn't think about anything else. The overthinking quieted, pushed aside by the simple, immediate needs of the body. Step, breathe. Step, breathe. It was almost like a rhythm, like a song without words. As she climbed higher, the village below became smaller, a collection of tiny buildings with smoke rising from their chimneys in lazy spirals. The stream was a silver thread winding through the valley. From up here, all the small dramas and worries of the village seemed very far away, very small. Maya stopped to rest, sitting on a flat boulder and sipping her tea. It was still warm and tasted of honey and herbs. The sun was higher now, warming her face, and for just a moment, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Peace, not because she had solved anything or figured anything out. Not because her worries had disappeared or her questions had been answered, but simply because in this moment, sitting on this sun-warmed rock, drinking her tea, watching the birds circle below her in the valley, she was okay. Right now, in this breath, in this heartbeat, she was okay. "Oh," she said softly, surprised by the feeling. It didn't last, of course. Soon her mind began to stir again, wondering how much farther she had to go, worrying that she might not make it back before dark after all, questioning whether this whole journey was foolish. But she had felt it, that moment of peace. And now she knew it was possible, even if she didn't yet know how to hold on to it. She shouldered her bag and continued upward. The path wound deeper into the forest, climbing steadily. Maya's legs burned, and she had to stop more frequently to catch her breath. But she pressed on, drawn by the mystery of the light, and by something else she couldn't quite name. A feeling that she was meant to make this journey, that at the end of it, she might find something important. The sun was high overhead when she finally reached the pine grove. The trees here grew so thick and tall that they blocked out much of the sky, creating a dim, green twilight even at midday. The air was cooler and smelled intensely of pine. The ground was soft with fallen needles, cushioning her footsteps. And there, in a small clearing surrounded by ancient pines, stood a cottage. It was small and simple, built of weathered wood that had turned silver with age. The roof was covered in moss, and climbing vines had woven themselves around the walls, dormant now in the autumn, but clearly lush and green in summer. A stone chimney rose from the center, and from it, a thin curl of smoke drifted up into the still air. The cottage had a single window, and in that window burned a candle, Even in the daylight, Maya could see its warm glow. This was the light she had seen. For a moment, Maya hesitated at the edge of the clearing. Who lived here? Would they welcome an unexpected visitor? What if they were unfriendly or wanted to be left alone? But even as these thoughts arose, she felt that pull again, that sense of rightness, of being exactly where she needed to be. She approached the cottage slowly, her footsteps silent on the pine needles. As she drew closer, she noticed details. A small garden, carefully tended, with herbs and late-blooming flowers. A wooden bench near the door, worn smooth by years of use. A bowl of water set out for passing animals. Everything was simple, but everything was cared for with obvious love. Before she could knock, the door opened, and there stood the oldest person Maya had ever seen. She, for the ancient being was clearly a woman, though she seemed almost ageless, almost beyond gender, was tiny and bent, her face a map of wrinkles, her hair white as snow and long, falling nearly to her waist. But her eyes were bright and clear, the deep brown of rich earth, and they looked at Maya with a kindness so profound it made Maya's throat tighten. "Hello, child," the old woman said. Her voice was soft, barely more than a whisper, but it carried clearly in the quiet of the forest. "I've been expecting you. Expecting me?" Maya's own voice sounded strange to her ears after the long, quiet walk. "Oh, yes. I lit the candle for you, after all." The old woman smiled, and her whole face transformed, becoming beautiful in the way that ancient things are beautiful, full of depth and time and wisdom. "I am called Elder, and you are Maya, who cannot sleep for thinking." Maya felt tears spring to her eyes, though she couldn't have said why. Perhaps because someone had seen her struggle. Perhaps because she was not alone in it after all. "How did you know?" she whispered. "I know many things," Elder said gently. "But mostly, I know what it is to carry too many thoughts. Come inside. You've walked a long way, and there is hot tea waiting, and bread with honey. And then, if you wish, I will tell you a story about thinking and not thinking and the space between." The inside of the cottage was as simple as the outside, but it was warm and welcoming. A fire burned low in the stone hearth, more for comfort than for heat. The room was sparsely furnished. A table, 2 chairs, a narrow bed in the corner, shelves lined with jars of herbs and grains. Bundles of dried flowers hung from the ceiling beams, filling the air with a gentle, calming scent. Lavender, chamomile, rose. There were no books, Maya noticed. Strange, for someone who seemed so wise. As if reading her thoughts, Elder chuckled softly. "I keep my stories here," she said, tapping her head. "And here," she added, placing a hand over her heart. "Books are wonderful, but sometimes they too can become a way of staying in our thoughts, rather than in our lives." She poured tea from a pot on the hearth, and the steam that rose smelled of mint and something else. Something Maya couldn't name, but that made her feel instantly calmer. Elder set out thick slices of dark bread and a small pot of honey that glowed golden in the firelight. They sat at the table, and for a long moment, they simply shared the meal in silence. Maya found she was hungrier than she'd realized, and the bread and honey tasted better than anything she'd had in weeks. Real, simple, nourishing. Elder ate slowly, with complete attention, as if each bite was worthy of her full presence. Maya tried to do the same, but her mind kept wandering, questioning. Why had Elder called her here? What would the story be? How did Elder know about her sleepless nights? "Your mind is very loud," Elder said softly, not unkindly. I can almost hear it from here, chattering away like a worried bird. Maya felt her cheeks flush. I'm sorry. I don't mean to. Don't apologize for your mind, child. It is trying to help you in the only way it knows how. The problem is not that you think. The problem is that you have forgotten how to rest. I try, Maya said, and she was surprised to hear the desperation in her own voice. I try so hard. I count breaths. I tell myself to stop worrying. I try to make my mind go blank. But it never works. I can't seem to turn my thoughts off. Elder reached across the table and took Maya's hands in her own. Her skin was papery and soft, her grip surprisingly strong. Dear one, she said gently, that is because you cannot turn thoughts off. The mind thinks. That is what it does. Asking your mind to stop thinking is like asking your heart to stop beating. It is not the nature of mind to be empty. Then what am I supposed to do? Maya felt the tears threatening again. How do I find peace if my mind won't be quiet? Elder said, her eyes twinkling. Now that is the right question. Not how do I make my mind stop, but how do I find peace even while my mind continues? Come, sit by the fire, and let me tell you a story. ## part 5. The story of the river and the stone. Elder settled into the chair by the hearth, moving slowly, her ancient bones crackling softly. Maya sat on a cushion on the floor, close to the fire, and found herself relaxing into the warmth, into the gentle presence of this strange, wise woman. Long ago, Elder began, her voice taking on the cadence of a storyteller. Before the village was built, before even the mountains had their current names, there was a river. A beautiful, rushing river that flowed from the high places down to the sea. The river was full of life and movement. It sang as it went, bubbling over rocks, creating little waterfalls, flowing around bends, splitting into streams, and coming back together. The river was never still, never quiet. It was always going, always moving, always thinking about the journey ahead. In this river, there lived a stone. The stone had been worn smooth by the constant flow of water, and it had nestled into a spot in the riverbed where it had sat for many, many years. Now, the river and the stone were friends, in the way that things which exist together for a long time become friends. They knew each other well. The river would rush over and around the stone every day, greeting it with splashes and foam. The stone would sit steady, letting the river flow over it, sometimes catching leaves or twigs that the river brought. But the stone was worried. The stone thought many thoughts, as stones sometimes do, though they think much more slowly than we do. The stone thought, what if the river washes me away? What if I am carried to a place I don't know? What if I end up in the ocean, where everything is vast and strange? What if? The stone held itself rigid, tense, trying to grip the riverbed, trying to make sure it would never be moved. The river noticed this. Dear stone, the river said one day, why are you so tense? You are holding yourself so tightly. I'm afraid, the stone admitted. I'm afraid you will wash me away. I'm afraid of what might happen. So I must stay vigilant. I must always be alert, always ready, always thinking about all the things that could go wrong. The river laughed, but it was a gentle laugh, full of understanding. Dear stone, the river said, I have been flowing over you for 100 years. In all that time, have I ever washed you away? Well, no, the stone said, but that doesn't mean it won't happen. I must be ready. And tell me, the river continued, all this worrying, all this tension, all this vigilance, has it kept you safe? The stone thought about this. I suppose so. I'm still here, aren't I? You are still here, the river agreed. But not because you worried. You are here because this is where you belong right now. You are here because the river and the riverbed and the other stones and the current all work together in a way much bigger than your individual worry. You don't hold yourself in place, dear friend. The whole system holds you. And if someday you are meant to move, no amount of worrying will prevent it. And if you are meant to stay, no amount of relaxing will wash you away. The stone considered this for a long time. A very long time, as stones measure time. And slowly, gradually, the stone began to release its grip, to soften, to let itself simply rest in the riverbed, trusting that the river knew what it was doing, trusting that there were forces much larger than its own small worry holding everything in place. And do you know what happened? Elder paused, looking at Maya with those wise, ancient eyes. Maya shook her head. Nothing dramatic. The stone simply continued to sit there, but now it was peaceful. The river continued to flow over it, but now the stone could enjoy the sensation, the coolness of the water, the tickle of tiny fish swimming by, the pleasure of sun-warmed water in summer and crisp cold water in winter. The stone still had thoughts. Of course, stones do think in their slow way, but the thoughts were no longer a cage. They were just thoughts, arising and passing like the leaves that floated by on the current. Sometimes the stone noticed them. Sometimes it didn't. Either way was fine. The stone learned something important. That peace doesn't come from having no thoughts, but from not needing to grip every thought so tightly. From trusting that you are held by something larger than your own worry. Elder fell silent, and the only sound was the crackle of the fire, and the wind sifting through the pines outside. Maya sat very still, feeling something shift inside her chest. Something loosening, just a little. But, she said slowly, what if the things I'm worried about are real? What if they're not just in my head? Oh, child, Elder said softly. Many of your worries are about real things. That's not the question. The question is, does worrying about them help? Does thinking about them over and over, late at night when you should be sleeping, change them? Or does it just make you tired? Maya opened her mouth to argue, then closed it, because Elder was right. How many nights had she spent worrying about something, only to have it resolve itself easily the next day? How many problems had seemed insurmountable at 3 in the morning, but manageable at 9? The mind thinks it is protecting you by worrying, Elder continued. It thinks, if I can just think about this enough, if I can just consider every angle, every possibility, then I can keep you safe. But the mind forgets that it is not the only thing keeping you safe. The body has its wisdom, the heart has its knowing, and the universe has its own ways of unfolding. So what do I do? Maya asked. When my mind starts spinning, when I'm lying awake at night, what do I do? Elder smiled. Would you like to learn? Hashtag part 6. The practice of returning. Elder rose from her chair slowly, moving to a small shelf where she kept a collection of smooth stones, each one carefully arranged. These are river stones, she said, picking one up and holding it out to Maya. I collected them over many years. Each one has been in the river. Each one has learned to release its grip. The stone was cool and smooth in Maya's palm, worn by years of water and time. It felt good to hold, solid and real. The practice, Elder said, settling back into her chair, is not about stopping your thoughts. It is about learning to be the river, not the stone. Or perhaps, to be the stone that has learned to rest in the river without fighting the current. I don't understand, Maya said. Thoughts are like the river. They flow constantly. You cannot stop them, any more than you can stop the river from flowing. But you can learn to let them flow past you without grabbing onto each one, without following each one all the way to the ocean. Elder gestured to the window, where the afternoon sun was beginning to slant through the trees. Watch the light through the leaves, she said. See how it moves, how it dances. The wind blows the branches, and the light shifts. But you don't grab at the light. You don't try to hold each pattern in place. You simply watch it, let it move, let it be what it is. Maya looked and saw what Elder meant. The light was constantly changing, moving, creating patterns that appeared and dissolved in the space of a breath. It was beautiful, and it was peaceful, precisely because it was allowed to move. Thoughts are like that, Elder said. They arise, they dance across the mind, they dissolve. The trouble comes when we grab at them. When we say, this thought is important, I must follow it. I must solve it right now. When we do that, we leave the present moment, this moment, where you are safe, where you are held, and we go into the thought world, which is a world of what-ifs and maybes and worries that don't exist anywhere except in the mind. She leaned forward, her eyes gentle. The practice is this. When you notice you are lost in thoughts, you simply return. You come back to something real, something present. The sensation of your breath moving in and out. The feeling of your body sitting or lying down. The sound of the wind, or the sight of the stars, or the warmth of your cat curled at your feet. But my thoughts are so loud, Maya said, so persistent. Yes, Elder agreed. They are, and they will continue to be for a while. The mind has practiced thinking for a long time. It has carved deep channels, like the river carves its bed. So at first, the thoughts will pull at you, will demand your attention. They will say, but this is important. You must think about this. What if something goes wrong? And what do I do then? You acknowledge them. You say, yes, mind, I hear you. Thank you for trying to protect me. And then you return to your breath, to this moment, to the feeling of being held. Elder took a slow breath, demonstrating. In, she whispered, and out. And in that breath, in that moment, there is no problem. There is only breath, only life moving through you. Maya tried it. Breathing in, she felt the cool air enter her nose, felt her chest expand. Breathing out, she felt the warmth of the air leaving, felt her shoulders drop slightly. And in that moment, Elder was right. There was no problem. There was only this. The breath, the warmth of the fire, the smooth stone in her hand. But then, immediately, her mind started again. But what about tomorrow? What about the meeting with the library board? What about... There, Elder said softly, as if she could hear Maya's thoughts. That's the moment. That's when you practice. You notice, I've left this moment. I've gone into the thought river. And then, gently, kindly, you come back. Again and again. Again and again. That is the practice. Not perfection. Not succeeding at making your mind be still. Simply returning, over and over, with patience and kindness, to this moment. It seems hard, Maya said. It is, Elder agreed. And it is also simple. Hard and simple, like most true things. They sat together in silence for a while. Maya practiced, holding the stone, breathing, noticing when her thoughts pulled her away, and gently returning to the sensation of breath, of body, of the present moment. Sometimes she could stay present for several breaths. Sometimes her thoughts grabbed her immediately, pulling her into worry or playing or remembering. But each time, she practiced returning, not with frustration or judgment, but with gentleness, as if she were guiding a small, frightened animal back to safety. After a time, Maya couldn't have said how long. Elder spoke again. "There is one more thing I want to show you," she said, "before the light fades. Will you walk with me?" Part 7. The Lake of Reflection. Elder led Maya out of the cottage and into the pine forest. They walked slowly, Elder leaning on a walking stick carved from ash wood, Maya carrying the smooth stone in her pocket, her fingers returning to it again and again, finding comfort in its solidness. The forest was deep in afternoon shadow now, the sun low enough that only scattered beams made it through the thick canopy. The air was cool and smelled of earth and needles, and the approaching evening. Somewhere far off, an owl called, though it was not yet dark enough for owls to hunt. They walked in silence, and Maya found that the silence was comfortable. She didn't need to fill it with words or questions. Elder's presence beside her was enough. Steady, calm, like walking next to an ancient tree. After perhaps 20 minutes, the forest began to open up. The trees grew less dense, and the light strengthened. And then, suddenly, they emerged from the forest onto the shore of a lake. Maya gasped. She had lived in the village all her life, had walked these mountains since she was a child, and she had never known this lake existed. It was not large, perhaps a quarter-mile across, but it was perfectly round and perfectly still. The water was so clear and so calm that it reflected the surrounding mountains and the sky above with absolute clarity, as if there were two worlds, the real one and its perfect twin below. "Oh," Maya breathed. "It's beautiful." "It is," Elder agreed. "This is the Mirror Lake. I come here often to remember. Remember what? Remember to be still. To reflect rather than to churn." They sat on a flat rock at the lake's edge. The stone was sun-warmed, comfortable. Elder settled herself with a small sigh of satisfaction, and they sat together, watching the lake. "You see," Elder said after a while, "when the lake is still, it can reflect everything clearly. The mountains, the sky, the clouds passing overhead. It shows the truth of what is. But if you threw a stone into the water, or if the wind came up and disturbed the surface, what would happen?" Maya thought about it. "The reflection would break up. Become ripples and fragments, yes. And the mountains would still be there, the sky would still be there, but you couldn't see them clearly anymore. The lake would be too busy moving to reflect anything truly." Elder picked up a small pebble and held it in her weathered hand. "The mind is like this lake. When it is still, it can see clearly. It can reflect reality as it is. But when it is constantly churning with thoughts, worries, plans, memories, what-ifs, it cannot see clearly anymore. Everything becomes distorted, fragmented." "But you said thoughts can't be stopped," Maya said. "So how can the mind be still if thoughts keep coming?" "Ah," Elder smiled. "Good question. The stillness I speak of is not the absence of thoughts. It is the absence of disturbance. You see, thoughts can arise on the surface of the mind like clouds arising in the sky. They appear, they drift across, they dissolve. But if we grab at each thought, if we dive into it and swim around in it, if we stir up the water by engaging with every thought that passes, then we lose the stillness." She set the pebble down without throwing it, leaving the lake's surface undisturbed. "Stillness is not about having no thoughts. It is about letting thoughts be without chasing them or fighting them. Like clouds in the sky, they will pass on their own if we don't grab at them." Maya watched the lake, considering this. The surface was so perfectly calm. A leaf drifted down from a nearby tree and landed on the water, creating the tiniest ripple that spread outward in perfect circles, and then was gone. The leaf floated on the surface, but it didn't disturb the lake's essential stillness. Even when something touches the lake, Maya observed, it settles back into stillness. Yes, Elder said warmly, that is the nature of stillness. It is not fragile. It does not need to be protected or maintained by force. It is the natural state that everything returns to when left alone. Your mind, too, has this natural stillness beneath all the thoughts. You don't have to create it. You only have to stop disturbing it. They sat together as the sun sank lower, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose and deep purple. The mountains turned violet, and their reflections in the lake became even more vivid as the light softened. Maya felt something settling inside her, some agitation quieting like the lake's ripples fading to stillness. I think I'm beginning to understand, she said softly. You are? Elder agreed. And understanding is good, but experience is better. Come, it will be dark soon. Let's return to the cottage, and I will teach you one more thing before you make your journey home. Part 8. The practice of releasing. Back at the cottage, Elder lit the candle in the window. The same candle Maya had seen from the village for 4 nights. Its flame was steady and warm, pushing back the darkness that had begun to fill the corners of the room. Sit, Elder said, gesturing to the cushion by the fire. Maya sat, and Luna... Wait, no. Luna was back at home. Maya smiled at her own confusion. It was the way Elder moved, so deliberate and calm that reminded her of her cat. That same quality of being completely present in each moment. Elder settled into her chair and looked at Maya with those deep, knowing eyes. Tonight, when you return home, you will practice what I am about to teach you. And tomorrow night. And the night after. Not because you must, but because it will help. Because it will remind you of what you learned here. I'm listening, Maya said. When you lie down to sleep, you will first feel your body. Really feel it. Not think about it, but feel it. The weight of your head on the pillow. The softness of the blanket. The way your shoulders touch the bed. Take time with this. Let your attention move through your body slowly. Noticing how it feels to be held by the bed, by the earth beneath. Maya nodded. Then you will bring your attention to your breath. Not changing it, not controlling it. Just noticing. The cool air coming in, the warm air going out. The gentle rise and fall of your chest and belly. Let your breath be an anchor, something to return to. And when the thoughts come, and they will come, child, they always do, you will practice what I taught you by the fire. You will notice a thought, and then you will let it pass, like a cloud drifting across the sky. You don't need to engage with it, don't need to follow it, don't need to solve it. You simply let it drift past, and you return to your breath, to the feeling of your body resting. But what if it's an important thought? What if it's something I really do need to think about? Elder's smile was infinitely kind. Then you tell yourself, this thought will be here in the morning. If it is truly important, it will not disappear just because I choose to rest now. I can think about it tomorrow, in the daylight, when I am fresh and clear. For now, I am choosing rest. She leaned forward, her voice becoming even softer. You see, Maya, most of the thinking we do late at night is not productive thinking. It is worried thinking, spinning thinking, the kind that goes in circles and solves nothing. The mind thinks that if it just keeps thinking, it will find a solution. But the solutions found in the dark hours are usually not good solutions. They are fear-based, exhausted solutions. So I just let them go? Go in peace, child. And remember, the light in my window will always burn for those who need to find their way to stillness. You are always welcome here. Maya left the cottage as the last light was fading from the sky. The forest was deep in shadow, but she found she wasn't afraid. She had the crystal in one pocket, the smooth river stone in the other, the lavender tucked into her bag. And more than that, she had something new inside her. Not knowledge exactly, but understanding. A felt sense of possibility. The path down the mountain was easier than the path up had been. She moved carefully in the gathering darkness, placing her feet with care, and found that the careful attention required to navigate the path kept her mind quiet. There was no room for worrying about tomorrow when she needed to focus on this step, this moment, this breath. Above her, through the gaps in the trees, stars were beginning to appear. One by one they emerged, like candles being lit in the vast cathedral of the sky. Maya paused to look up at them, and felt a rush of something she couldn't name. Awe, perhaps, or recognition. As if the stars were old friends she had forgotten, now remembered. She thought of what Elder had said, that the mind could be like the still lake, reflecting reality clearly. Looking up at the stars, she tried to just see them, without thinking about them, without wondering about them or questioning. Just seeing. Just experiencing the vast beauty of the cosmos wheeling above her. And for a moment, just a moment, her mind was quiet. Not empty, but peaceful. Full of stars and silence, and the gentle sound of her own breathing. It didn't last. Soon her thoughts began again, wondering what time it was, whether Luna would be hungry, whether she'd locked the library properly before she left. But now, she noticed the thoughts differently. Before, she had been inside them, drowning in them. Now, she could see them as separate from herself. Thoughts arising, thoughts passing, like clouds, she thought, like ripples on water. She walked on, and the forest opened up, and she could see the village below, its windows glowing warmly in the darkness. Her cottage was there, one small light among many. Luna would be waiting. Her familiar bed, her familiar life. But she was returning to it changed, not fixed. She knew that the overthinking wouldn't simply vanish, that she would still have difficult nights, that the practice of returning to stillness would require patience and persistence. But she was returning with tools, with understanding, with hope. The village streets were quiet when she reached them. Most people had gone to bed, and only a few windows still showed light. She walked through the empty square, past the library with its climbing roses, now just dark shapes in the night, and arrived at her cottage door. Luna greeted her with an indignant meow. "Where have you been? You're late," but quickly forgave her when Maya scooped her up and held her close, feeling the rumble of her purr, the warmth of her small body. "I learned something today, old friend," Maya whispered into Luna's fur. "I learned that peace is possible, even for minds like mine." She made herself a cup of chamomile tea and sat in her chair by the window, Luna in her lap, and looked up at the mountain. She couldn't see the cottage from here. It was too far, too hidden in the forest, but she could imagine it. The warm light in the window, Elder in her chair by the fire, the lake beyond, perfectly still, reflecting the stars. And she realized that she carried that stillness with her now. It wasn't something she had to travel to find. It was already here, already available, in each breath. In each moment she chose to return to presence rather than remaining lost in thought. Eventually, She rose and prepared for bed. She placed the lavender beside her pillow as Elder had instructed. She set the crystal on her nightside table where she could reach it. The smooth river stone went under her pillow. Luna curled up at her feet, purring steadily, and Maya lay back, feeling the bed hold her completely. She took a breath and began the practice. First, feeling her body. The weight of her head on the pillow, heavier than she usually noticed. As if she had been carrying it all day and could finally set it down. The softness of the mattress beneath her shoulders, her back, her legs. The warmth of the blankets. The gentle pressure of Luna's body against her feet. She took her time, moving her attention slowly through her body, noticing each point of contact, each sensation. And in the noticing, she felt her body begin to relax in a way it hadn't in months. Muscles she didn't know she was holding tight began to soften. Then her breath. Cool air flowing in through her nose, traveling down into her lungs. A pause at the top of the breath, that still point between in and out. Then the warm air flowing back out, carrying tension with it. In, hold, out, rest, in, hold, out, rest. And then, of course, the thoughts came. What about the library meeting on Tuesday? What if they don't approve the budget? What if, a thought. Maya noticed it, acknowledged it. Yes, mind, I hear you. And then gently, kindly, she returned to her breath, to the sensation of air moving in and out, to the feeling of being held by the bed. The thought hovered there for a moment, like a child tugging at her sleeve, demanding attention. But she didn't follow it. She let it be, and turned her attention back to breath, back to body, back to now. Another thought arose. Did I really lock the library? What if I forgot? What if there it is again? Hello, worried mind. I know you're trying to help. Thank you. But for now, I'm choosing rest, breath, body, now. The thoughts kept coming, as Elder had said they would. But each time, Maya practiced returning. Not perfectly. Sometimes she would follow a thought for several minutes before she realized she'd been caught. But when she realized it, she didn't judge herself. She simply returned, again and again, with the gentleness Elder had taught her. And slowly, gradually, the spaces between thoughts began to widen. A whole breath without thinking. Then 2 breaths. Then several. In those spaces, there was peace. A deep, quiet peace that had nothing to do with solving problems or understanding everything. A peace that simply was, like the lake, like the stars, like the ancient mountains watching over the village. Maya felt herself beginning to drift, to float on the edge of sleep. The last thing she remembered was the smell of lavender, the warmth of Luna's purr, and a thought that was different from all the others. Not a worry, not a question, but a simple statement of truth. I am held. I am safe. I can rest now. And she did. Maya woke the next morning feeling different. Not completely transformed. The overthinking didn't vanish with one night's sleep. But something had shifted. There was a space now. A small gap between her and her thoughts. A place where she could choose whether to engage or whether to let them pass. At work that day, as she shelved books and helped patrons, she practiced what Elder had taught her. When her mind began to spin with worries, she would hold the crystal in her pocket for a moment, feeling its smooth surface, its coolness, letting it anchor her back to the present moment. "Are you all right, dear?" Mrs. Chen asked at one point. "You seem different somehow." Maya smiled. "I am different. I think, in a good way." She didn't tell Mrs. Chen about the mountain, about Elder, about the Mirror Lake. Some experiences were too precious, too delicate to share immediately. They needed time to settle, to integrate, to become part of her before they could be spoken of. But she did make one change. At the end of each day, before she locked up the library, she took a moment to stand in the main room and simply be there. To notice the late afternoon light through the tall windows, to smell the vanilla and thyme scent of the books, to feel grateful for this place, this work, this life. And at night, she practiced. Every night, lying in bed with Luna at her feet and the lavender by her pillow. She would feel her body, notice her breath, and when thoughts came, she would practice returning. Some nights were easier than others. Some nights her mind was particularly loud, particularly insistent, and she would spend what felt like hours gently redirecting her attention back to breath, back to body, back to now. On those nights, she would remember elders saying, "The practice is not perfection. The practice is returning, again and again, with kindness." And gradually, over weeks and then months, something changed. Maya still had thoughts, of course. Her mind didn't become empty or blank, but she developed a different relationship with her thoughts. They became less like absolute truths that must be believed and followed, and more like suggestions, like possibilities, like clouds drifting past. She learned to distinguish between productive thinking, the kind that helped her solve problems and make plans, and worry thinking, the kind that just spun in circles, accomplishing nothing except exhaustion. And when she noticed worry thinking beginning, she would hold her crystal, take a breath, and return to the present moment. She learned that most of her worries never came true, and the few that did turn into real problems were almost never as catastrophic as her midnight imagination had made them seem. She learned that she was more resilient than she believed, more capable of handling whatever came. She learned to trust life a little more, to trust that she didn't need to control everything, to figure out everything, to be prepared for everything. That there was wisdom in her body, in her heart, in the universe itself, and that sometimes the best thing she could do was rest and let that wisdom work. The library board approved her budget. The plumbing got fixed. Mrs. Chen found her gardening books. Tomas returned his overdue books without Maya having to remind him. Life continued, with its mixture of challenges and joys, problems and solutions, and Maya found she could meet it all with a little more calm, a little more trust, a little more peace. And every evening, as the sun set and the first stars appeared, she would look up at the mountain and see that single light burning in the window of Elder's cottage. A reminder, a beacon, a promise that stillness was always available, that she could return to it whenever she needed. Winter came to the village, transforming everything with snow and silence. The mountains wore thick white cloaks, and the trees bent under the weight of ice and frost. The stream froze at its edges, and children skated on its surface, their laughter ringing clear in the cold air. Maya had always struggled with winter. The long dark nights, the cold that seeped into bones, the way the world seemed to close in, small and gray and endless. But this winter felt different. She had continued her practice faithfully, and by now, the act of returning to breath, to body, to presence had become almost natural. Not easy. Her mind still wandered, still worried, still spun stories, but familiar. She knew how to find her way back to stillness, even when the thoughts were loud. One particularly cold night, Maya woke at 3 in the morning. The cottage was freezing. The fire had died down to embers, and her breath made small clouds in the air. Luna was pressed against her side, seeking warmth, and her mind immediately began, "It's so cold." What if the pipes freeze? What if I get sick? What if the heating system fails? What if Maya felt the familiar spiral beginning, felt the anxiety starting to grip her chest? But then she remembered. She sat up slowly, disturbing Luna, who grumbled in protest. She wrapped herself in her grandmother's quilt and went to the window. Outside, the world was transformed by moonlight and snow. Everything was silver and blue and white, painted in shades of dreams. The village square was empty and perfect, every surface softened by snow, every harsh edge gentle. And above, the stars burned brilliant and cold in a clear black sky. It was beautiful, heartbreakingly beautiful. Maya held the crystal from the mirror lake, now hanging on a cord around her neck where she kept it always. She took a breath of the cold air and felt it sharp and clean in her lungs. "I am cold," she said softly to the night, "and I am worried. And both of those things are okay. They are just experiences, just sensations, just thoughts arising." She took another breath, feeling her feet on the cold floor, feeling the quilt around her shoulders, feeling the aliveness of her body even in the cold. "But right now, in this moment, I am okay. I am safe. I am held." She stood there for a long time, looking out at the winter night, feeling the cold and accepting it, letting her thoughts come and go like snow falling, like clouds passing, like the breath moving through her. And slowly, the anxiety released its grip, not because the cold had changed, not because her worries had been solved, but simply because she had chosen to be present with what was, rather than lost in thoughts about what might be. She stoked the fire, adding wood until it crackled back to life, sending warmth into the room. She made herself tea with the herbs Elder had given her, chamomile and lavender, and something else she couldn't name, but that tasted like peace. And then, wrapped in her quilt, sitting in the chair by the now warm fire, with Luna purring in her lap, and the steam from her tea rising in the lamplight, Maya felt something she had never quite felt before. Contentment. Not the contentment of having everything figured out. Not the contentment of having no problems, or worries, or challenges. But the contentment of being present with her life exactly as it was. The good and the difficult, the joy and the sorrow, the warmth and the cold, all of it, just as it was, in this moment. Enough. She was enough. This moment was enough. Life, with all its uncertainty and all its beauty, was enough. Spring came eventually, as it always does. The snow melted, revealing the sleeping earth beneath. Crocuses pushed through the last patches of snow, purple and white and gold. The stream ran full and fast with snowmelt. The roses on the library began to show the first green buds that would, in time, become flowers, and Maya felt called to return to the mountain. She had thought of Elder often throughout the winter, had wondered how the old woman fared in her cottage, so remote, so alone. Though somehow Maya suspected that Elder was not lonely. That solitude, for her, was not isolation but rather a kind of communion with stillness itself. On the first truly warm day of spring, Maya packed a basket with bread and cheese and honey, with dried fruit and nuts, with a jar of the jam she had made the previous summer. She locked the library, it was her day off, and set out for the mountain. The journey up was easier this time, both because she knew the way and because she was different. Stronger somehow, more grounded. She noticed the beauty around her with a deeper attention, the way the new leaves caught the light, the sound of birdsong in the trees, the smell of warming earth and growing things. And she noticed that her mind was quieter, not empty. It never would be, but less frantic, less desperate. less caught in the endless spiral of what if and what then. When she reached the cottage, Elder was sitting on the bench outside. Her face turned up to the sun, her eyes closed. She looked even older than Maya remembered, more fragile, as if she were slowly becoming transparent, slowly fading into the light. But when she heard Maya's footsteps, she opened her eyes and smiled. And her smile was as bright and warm as summer. "Little Maya," she said. "You came back." "I did," Maya said, setting down her basket and sitting beside Elder on the bench. "I wanted to thank you, and to tell you that I've been practicing. That it's helping. I know," Elder said simply. "I can see it in you. You carry stillness with you now. It's there in your eyes, in the way you move. You have learned to rest, even while living." They sat together in comfortable silence for a time, feeling the sun on their faces, listening to the wind in the pines. Finally, Maya said, "Will you tell me another story?" Elder chuckled softly. "Always wanting stories, you humans. Very well. But this time, I think you already know the story I'm going to tell. Because it's your story now too, my story? Yes. It's the story of how peace is found. Would you like to hear it?" Maya nodded. "Once upon a time," Elder began, her voice soft and ancient, "there was a person who could not stop thinking. Thoughts came to them like a flood, like a storm, like a river that had overflowed its banks. And the person struggled and fought, trying to dam the river, trying to stop the flood, trying to make the thoughts go away. But the thoughts would not go away. And the more the person fought them, the louder they became. The more they tried to stop thinking, the more thoughts appeared, as if the very act of resistance was feeding them, making them stronger. The person became exhausted, desperate. They thought, if only I could be different. If only my mind could be quiet. If only I weren't like this." But then, one day, the person met someone who showed them a different way. Not fighting the thoughts. Not trying to dam the river. But learning to be the banks that hold the river, rather than drowning in the water. Learning to be the sky through which the clouds pass, rather than the clouds themselves. Learning to be the awareness that notices thoughts, rather than being caught inside them. And slowly, slowly, with practice and patience and kindness, the person changed. Not by becoming someone different, but by remembering who they had always been beneath the thoughts, beneath the worry, beneath the constant mental noise. They remembered the stillness that had always been there, waiting. The peace that was their true nature, the nature of all beings, the nature of awareness itself. Elder turned and looked at Maya with those deep, knowing eyes. That person learned that they didn't need to be fixed. They were never broken. They just needed to remember how to rest. Maya felt tears sliding down her cheeks, though she wasn't sad. They were tears of recognition, of gratitude, of release. "Thank you," she whispered. "You did the work," Elder said. "I only pointed the way. And now, you can point the way for others. When you meet someone who is struggling as you struggled, who is lost in the spiral of overthinking, you can share what you have learned. Not by telling them what to do, but by being a living example of peace. By showing them that it's possible." They spent the afternoon together, walking to the Mirror Lake, sitting in the cottage, sharing food and silence and occasional words. And when the sun began to lower, Maya knew it was time to return home. Elder walked her to the edge of the clearing, moving slowly, leaning on her walking stick. "Will I see you again?" Maya asked. "Perhaps," Elder said. "Or perhaps not. The light will always burn in my window for those who need to find their way to stillness. But Maya, you don't need the light anymore. You carry it within you now, She placed her hand on Maya's heart. "Here," she said. "The stillness lives here. Always available. Always waiting. You need only remember to return to it." Maya hugged Elder carefully, feeling how fragile she was, how light, like a bird. And when she stepped back, she saw that Elder was smiling, her old face radiant with joy. "Go in peace," Elder said, "and sleep well." Hashtag closing. An invitation to rest. And so Maya returned to her life, to her library and her cottage and her elderly cat, to her friends and her work and the rhythms of the village, to the small joys and the small challenges that make up a human life. But she was different now. She had learned the practice of returning, the practice of meeting each moment with presence rather than with worry, the practice of letting thoughts be thoughts, clouds passing through the vast sky of awareness. She still had difficult nights. There were still times when her mind spun and worried and refused to settle. But now, she knew what to do. She would hold her crystal, breathe in the scent of lavender, feel the smooth river stone, and remember that she was not her thoughts. Remember that peace was always available, always waiting, beneath the surface of the mind. Remember to return. Again and again, with kindness, with patience, with the gentle persistence of water wearing stone. And most nights, eventually she would sleep, deep and restful, held by the bed, held by the earth, held by the great stillness that underlies all things. And now, dear friend, this story has brought you to its ending, or perhaps to its beginning. For this has been your story too, hasn't it? You, who are reading or listening to these words in the quiet of evening or the deep of night. You, who know what it is to lie awake with thoughts spinning, with worries crowding in, with a mind that will not quiet. You, who have been seeking peace, seeking rest, seeking that elusive stillness. Let me tell you something true. You don't need to go to a mountain to find it. You don't need a wise elder to teach you, though the teaching helps. You don't need special crystals or stones or herbs, though these things can remind you. You have everything you need already. Right here, right now. You have your breath, moving in and out, as it has since you were born, as it will until your last day. Faithful, constant, always bringing you back to now. You have your body, this miraculous collection of atoms and cells and systems, all working together to keep you alive, to hold you, to carry you through this world. Your body, which knows how to rest even when your mind does not. You have your awareness, the part of you that notices thoughts without being the thoughts. The part of you that is reading these words right now, that is aware of reading them. That awareness is like the sky, vast, open, unchanging. The thoughts are like clouds, temporary passing, constantly shifting. You are the sky, not the clouds. And right now, in this moment, you can practice what Maya learned. Feel your body. Really feel it. The weight of your head. The surface beneath you, holding you completely. The gentle rise and fall of your breath. The beating of your heart. You are here. You are alive. You are held. And all the thoughts that are arising about tomorrow, about yesterday, about what you should do or should have done or might need to do, they are just thoughts. Just clouds passing through the sky of you. Let them pass. Not by pushing them away. Not by fighting them. But by simply turning your attention elsewhere. To breath. To body. To the sensation of being alive, right here, right now. When your mind says, "But this thought is important, you need to think about this right now." And it will say that, minds always do. You can answer kindly, "Perhaps, but if it's truly important, it will still be here in the morning. For now, I choose rest and return to breath, to body, to now, again and again, with gentleness, with patience, with the kindness you would show to a small child who needs to be guided back to bed. This is the practice, not perfection, not success at making your mind empty or blank, simply returning over and over. And in those returns, in those moments of presence, you will find peace. Not as something you create or achieve, but as something you remember. Something that was always there, waiting for you to notice. Like the mirror lake, still and perfect. Like the stars, eternal and bright. Like the mountains, ancient and unmoved by passing storms. That stillness is your true nature. It has always been yours. You have only forgotten how to rest in it. But now you remember. So let your eyes close, if they haven't already. Let your body sink a little deeper into the surface that holds you. Let your breath slow and deepen, like waves lapping gently at the shore. And know that you are safe, that this moment is enough, that you are enough. All the problems, all the worries, all the thoughts, they will still be there tomorrow if they need your attention. But tonight, they don't need you. Tonight, you can rest. The moon is rising wherever you are. The stars are beginning to appear, one by one, like candles being lit. The earth is turning slowly, carrying you through space, through time, through this precious, ordinary, miraculous night. And somewhere on a distant mountain, in a cottage surrounded by pines, a single candle burns in a window. A light for those who need to remember how to be still. But you don't need to go there, because the light is already within you. In your breath, in your body, in your awareness, you are the stillness you have been seeking. Rest now. Let your thoughts drift like snow falling on still water. Let your breath be gentle, effortless. Let yourself be held by this moment, by this bed, by this world. You are safe. You are loved. You are exactly where you need to be. Rest. Rest now. And sleep well, dear friend. Sleep well.